You didn't give me all the instructions.
I'm sorry.
So, well, half of it is gone. Half of it is, the first part of the service is not even on there.
It's okay. It's on YouTube.
So this election says yes. In spite of all that we have all gone through in our life and the journey and the road that we've been on in our lives, be it from childhood to adulthood, will your heart and will your soul say yes to God? Because the one thing we know is, and you'll learn before this day is over, is that God is the only one that can bring us out of every situation. There's no medicine, there's no anything that can do what our God can do. And so as we are ministering this song, just prepare your heart for all that the Lord has prepared for you on this day. And the song just says, yes. Will your heart and soul say yes, yes? Will your spirit still say yes? If I told you what I really need from you, will your heart and soul say yes? Now will your heart and soul say yes, yes? Will your spirit still say yes? I know what all you have gone through, but will your heart and soul say yes? Will your heart and soul say yes, yes? Will your spirit still say yes? I know what I desire from thee, but will your heart and soul say yes? Just say yes, yes. I'll obey your will. This time I've made up in my mind. I've made up in my mind. deal with what I went through, but who I went through it with was very close to me. And it was so close to me that it bothered me to the point I didn't know how I was going to get through this thing. But he said, in spite of all that I went through and that my enemies was right there hounding on me, he said, in spite of all that I had gone through, I trusted in the Lord. You see, we're not coming today as though we're perfect and though we haven't gone through anything. But this is what our God is saying. If you would just trust me, you won't have to lean to the thoughts of people. You don't have to worry about your past. You won't have to worry about the mistakes that you've made in your life. You won't have to worry about what you thought your journey was. You'll accept it as, you know what? It was planned and purposed by God so that I could get closer to him. And then maybe you've never been touched in an ill way. Maybe you've touched someone and you need the Lord to forgive you for the abuse that you did to somebody else. Guess what? We serve a God who will still forgive. And you might say, I don't fit in any of those categories. But will you say yes on this afternoon to learning what I can do, to learning how I can minister to those who've gone through struggles in life, to minister to those who want to come out, who've been little children and who've been encompassed with all of that hurt and pain as adults? Will you say, yes, Lord, I'm your child. I'll do it. I won't turn a deaf ear to them. Will you say, Lord, no more will I be right in the midst and not help someone. I'll lend a helping hand because I'm the hand and feet of Jesus. Will you just say yes on the day? If you would just join us by lifting up your hands with us. Yes. Yes.
We're going to move right along to trafficking. The speaker for today is Kathy Nunez. She's a Christian case manager at the Salvation Army, Project Fight. Project Fight is a program that offers comprehensive case management to victims of human trafficking. Prior to being a case manager, Kathy was the executive assistant to the director of social ministries and both area commanders at the Salvation Army of Wake County. Kathy has served victims of human trafficking for 6 years in various roles, such as case manager, interpreter, advocate, and spiritual motivator. She is currently pursuing her bachelor's in social work and plans to complete her degree at North Carolina State University. Kathy is married to Charles Cepeda, and together they serve in the Awana ministry at the Summit Church. They are parents to 2 ladies, ages 7 and 4. I present to you Kathy Nunez.
talk a little bit about human trafficking, and then I can open it up to questions, or you guys can meet me after. But I have been with this wonderful program where God has placed me time and time again to serve victims of human trafficking right here in this area. Human trafficking is basically when a person or a group of people are lured into commercial sex or labor trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. That is the definition of trafficking. Our program is available to help a victim at pretty much any stage after they are rescued or at any stage in their recovery. So anything from when law enforcement comes out and does a sting and we're right there right beside them, or all the way through their whole healing process. So we get to see a lot of change. Sometimes victims do go back depending on dependency issues or just it's not their time to leave the situation. But we get to see that client throughout the whole time that they are within our program. Our program does not have a limit. So if you, I have clients who've been on my caseload for 2 years, depending on what that person's situation is. As long as they're working a case plan, we are right there with that person, guiding them through the whole process that they go through. Project Fight has 6 offices in North Carolina, so we are a huge program. We serve all 100 counties in North Carolina. There are offices in Asheville, in Charlotte, in Boone. There's 2 case managers here in Raleigh, one in Greenville and one in Jacksonville. So we are a very busy, very ongoing program. We offer or operate a 24-hour hotline. So at any given time, we get called out. Law enforcement, the national hotline calls us, lets us know, hey, there's a victim who needs rescue, and we are automatically activated to go help that victim wherever they're at. So that's pretty much it about what our program does. Human trafficking does look a lot of different ways. Some people want to know, well, what's the face of a human trafficking victim, and then what's the face of a trafficker? And really, there is no face. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 7 years, and I've seen people who are bachelor's degree graduates, who are homeless, I've seen it all. So basically, sometimes I tell people, like, hey, I could be sitting here being trafficked, and I can also be a trafficker, because human trafficking has no face. That's pretty much the big gist of things, that once you know the signs, you get to pick up on certain things, but anybody can fall into that category. Both men, women, and children can fall victim of what human trafficking is. So, yeah. Do you guys have any questions?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Is there a age point that the trafficker is no longer interested in the money?
No. We've had clients, I've heard of stories as early as maybe 4 years old, I think is the youngest client that we've served, all the way up to like 66. So yeah, even like disabled clients we've had, yeah, I mean, it's just pretty much whatever that fetish is that person gets involved with. Yep. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
What are some of the signs someone should look for?
Well, sometimes even things that look out of place. Like if you're driving down the street and it's winter time and you see a woman who is, in a spaghetti shirt and, things that are out of place, that could be kind of a red flag. We don't tell people like, oh, go ahead and approach that person because you don't know who might be watching. Sometimes pimps stay away from that victim, but still have a watchful eye because they want to make sure that they're doing what they were supposed to be doing. But calling the National Human Trafficking Hotline or calling local law enforcement will probably be the best way to set a tip. Like, hey, I'm seeing this. Sometimes things are being investigated that we don't even know about. So whenever you see that something is kind of off, it's better to report. I remember one time we were at Wendy's on New Bern Avenue, and there was a gentleman who was much, much older. You could tell that they weren't related, and he was ordering for another person who, again, didn't have the right attire for the time of the year that it was, and he wouldn't let her speak. He was ordering for her, and like whenever the person who was ordering asked her a question, he would answer and like kind of give her a look. So that was kind of like a red flag. But again, even with my experience, I wouldn't approach that as a situation. You just go ahead and make the phone call.
So does it matter with an infant? Is there a way you can tell if they're being trafficked or if they're being
Something's wrong with it.
No,
held or something?
They don't want to move.
no, you can't tell. I mean,
It doesn't
sometimes
wanna
they
move.
are, that's the thing with like infants, unless like law enforcement or or CPS or somebody has been involved, investigated, done, former investigations, it's hard for us to tell. We usually get referrals once that's already been done, from children. It's hard because how an infant's mind works. I mean, an infant, you can't even really tell unless, like the 3-month-old that was in the news about a year ago or so. That's hard to tell unless, they came in and, and that was then brought about in the investigation. But once Project Fight gets them, usually the investigation has already been done, and that's how we get the referral.
So Kathy, can you speak to how closely related trafficking is with prostitution and all of the other different variants that can possibly, I guess, support the trafficking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sometimes you see, at least for our experience, we have noticed that, okay, when you see a prostitute or there's this thing going on and law enforcement will bring in a prostitute, yeah, the woman has been then cited for prostitution on that instinct, but the more that we talk to her and build that rapport, we can pretty much narrow down in her lifetime where there was a trafficker at some point, whether it was where she was younger or in the middle or she's just coming out of it. And this is all this woman thinks that she's good enough to do is to prostitute. So she doesn't have anything else to do but prostitute in her mind, because she's been programmed to think that this is all you're good for. So yeah, sometimes you see a prostitute and there's drugs involved. So that sometimes him can control that situation. He'll supply her the drugs, and then, you have to pay me back by prostituting. So sometimes there's more to it. At least in our experience has been, 9 times out of 10, I would say, I've been in front of a victim and there's more to it than just like, oh, this is what I want to do. Like, a woman doesn't want to do that. So it's just digging deeper and forming that relationship. And the great thing about our program is that if there was trafficking at any point in this person's life, they will qualify for our program. It doesn't have to be right here, right now. We really want to work with that victim to get them out of the situation for good. And there's other agencies that we partner with to help, self-esteem and resumes and jobs, just to build that woman up or person and say, you're worth more.
All that comes from like being brainwashed and everything. You gotta change that mindset.
Yeah.
So,
You have to rewire them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes that takes years. And we've closed cases that doesn't never happen. But we can't rewire them. But it's because it's been so many years of trauma that has built on this person. Yes, sir.
Your hotline number, is that an anonymous number?
You can make an anonymous call, yes, and I can give you that number.
And what information should be given?
So location is always great, description of the person that you're calling about, that you think is the victim or the perpetrator. Any details that you can give them, because like I said, even for us, sometimes we know things that are being investigated, but most of the time we don't until we're called to assist. So any information that you have on what you saw, why do you feel is sketchy, what triggered that, what do you want that person to know, like why does this person need help? And that number is a national number, so it'll get trickled down to the agencies that are, supposed to be activated to help that victim. It might not happen, like you may see that person again, but the more someone calls about the same thing, the more red flags come up about, hey, this area, something's going on. So it's always good to report. Yeah. Yes, sir.
yes.
Now you guys, okay, so he has a question, but he lives this life with me. This is my husband, Charles, and I would not be able to do this work without his support. He is the backbone of all my crazy. He believes in my crazy faith to help victims of human trafficking. So, yes, sir, what is your question?
Yes, besides you say there being a pimp, is there like a middle person involved still for the prostitution?
Sometimes. So sometimes there are what we call bottom, which is a woman or man who has been brainwashed, again, to think that they are the pimp's right-hand person. They go out and they kind of scoop out other people that could potentially work for this pimp. But there's usually that you know, entitlement of like, oh, I'm the right-hand person, so, I'm basically the mini boss, and they don't ever see themselves. Sometimes they're called their girlfriend, sometimes there's more than one bottom, it just depends on how big that ring is. Thank you.
So I don't know if you said before, I don't know if it was said before, but is like prostitution part of trafficking? Is that, that's part of it? Okay, that's what I needed to know. Okay, thank you.
You had mentioned earlier that people that you are rescuing may not want to be rescued. What happens if you're trying to help them, and do you keep them there for an extended period of time and let them go back out, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's, the whole program is up to the person and what they wanna do. So at no time does a victim have to be in our program for a period amount of time. We're working with them on what their goals are, and what, essentially helping them on where they wanna get in life. So, I mean, I've had clients for 2 hours, I've had clients for 3 years. It just depends on how long the person wants to be. But no, if we are in a situation like a sting, for example, and that person walks in, we talk about what services we have, and they say, I don't want it, they are welcome to walk right out the door. Yep, but I have had, it's planting a seed. So people think, oh, well, there's something I could really do, it's planting a seed. And sometimes I have had people call back and say, hey, do you remember me from, you know, X, Y, and Z, where the police, you know, cited me? Like, I want help now. It's just timing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Statistically, they say that a victim will leave the situation and come back 7 times before they commit to staying out because of the brainwash. So it's just continuing to spread that seed. And be consistent, so we have to be consistent. Like, my clients know Kathy's Kathy. So Kathy's not gonna, I'm here to help you, but Kathy's Kathy. So, I mean, I've had it happen where people have come back 2 years later, I'm still Kathy. I'm still here to help you, but you've gotta do your end. It's to help you, not the other way around. And our program, just to clarify, we don't charge anything. We are grant funded by 2 grants right now, 3, I'm sorry. So the victim comes in, no matter how long they stay, they don't always attend. There's nothing attached to it.
Joe's gonna be the last question.
Okay?
You
Okay. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm welcome. I can provide the National Human Trafficking Hotline number. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, when you provide for the person, do you supply the place to live? Is
Yes.
this it in a, like a motel, a hotel?
So
or
we
is it
have,
private homes?
we have, well, both. We have an area where we can secure, we have 5 beds in an area here in the area, where we can secure a person a night's sleep until other arrangements are made. But yes, hotel is part of the grant money that we get, that in an emergency we can supply that. And then safety is always a concern. So if this person is in great danger in this area, so if we rescue them in the 3 o'clock in the morning, we let them stay in a secured area for the night, and then in the morning we assess the situation, what are the dangers, we work with law enforcement to see how things are looking, and then if they're able to leave, we facilitate them going to a safer place. Yeah, and then as a church, I always like to encourage, people think, okay, well, we're on the front lines doing the work, law enforcement's on the front lines doing the work, but also you guys are on the front line doing the work. You know, with prayer for the teams that are going out doing this type of work, you know, planting that seed, you know, and you guys have been great about giving Project Fight things in the past, you know, shampoo, conditioner. I mean, we're rescuing people who come out of their situations with nothing. The clothes in their back, sometimes not even shoes. So providing those things does help, you know, in the process of this person that doesn't have to worry about, well, where am I gonna get shampoo from? Where am I gonna get shaving cream from? That's already there because of organizations and churches like you all who will help facilitate that for our program. It just makes it really easy to hand somebody some shampoo and conditioner and be like, here, go take a shower, rest up, we'll see you in the morning. So that's how you guys can plug in. You know, there's volunteers opportunities that you can get through, you know, contacting Project Fight. We're very particular because of the nature of the work, who we bring on, but there's trainings to go along to equip y'all, just like I have been equipped, because I'm standing up here and I've been equipped by the Lord to do this work, to equip y'all to work with victims of human trafficking. So if there's anything that you're like, oh, well, maybe this will help, run it by us, because I'm pretty sure I can plug in creatively where you can help. Yeah? Go ahead.
Yeah, I realize you said your havens are secure places, but have you had any instances where the traffickers or the pimps have located some of their victims?
Yes.
And what's the procedure for that? I guess you
You
contact.
move fast.
Oh, yeah.
That was my question.
That's where law enforcement comes in?
Yes, we're very particular. We do tell victims not to disclose the location where they're at, obviously. But you have to remember that trauma bond.
They're weak.
They're attached to this
traumatized.
boyfriend, to
And they
this
would tell
person
him,
that
they
they
would tell him
love.
where they at.
So yeah, when that boo calls the phone, you know, we don't take their phone.
This is on a
So
weak state.
if they want to leave, they catch them in that vulnerable, you know, situation. Yes, there are people that have disclosed where we're at.
Because they still
Yeah.
in that fresh
But that
state
we
of
won't.
trying to get away.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. We're gonna move right along to the skit about domestic violence. And it goes right along with the title, We Are Not the Only Ones, Men Are Affected Also.
Yes. Come on in and trying to find something.
That don't look like you're trying to find nothing to me.
Well, I'm trying. I mean, you know, can't have because.
What's that?
What do you mean? What is that? What is it?
Don't look like nothing to me.
Well, I'm just telling you, I'm trying to search for some stuff. And
What
it's
you
kind of
searching for?
over. I'm grown. That's what I'm searching for.
Really?
Yeah.
You wrong?
Mama, just leave him alone. He don't know what he's doing anyway. Just leave him alone. Just leave him alone. He don't know what he's doing. I don't even know why you even take the time to talk to him. Why? He don't do nothing. Why?
What's that?
That's my daughter.
Oh, it used to be our daddy. Now
No,
it's
it's
just.
not.
Oh.
I don't know why you. Yeah, I don't know why you saying all of that.
Why you going with? You don't never be down here until you get. Oh,
She all right.
You gonna be twisted up next.
What you got to do with it?
All I just need to
You don't have to worry.
You don't talk that way to my
You just
mom.
stay home.
I don't care.
Check her face.
I don't
To the
care how
first
you.
angle. I don't
you
know
call
which one to look
yourself
at.
crazy. You don't talk to my mama like that.
I do everything you need, you sit in here, and I take care of you.
Do you want me to? Do you want me to?
Doing what?
She works
Doing what?
every day. She can make her money.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, can somebody look after the baby for a few minutes, cause my favorite
I
part is
got to
coming
go.
up.
I need to go.
Okay.
I need to go pay a
You
bill
got
over
the baby?
here.
Okay, here you go.
You can just take care of her.
You know, men might not go through
I don't know where
physical,
to go.
although they can, but each and every day, it might be a mental thing, a control thing.
That's abuse.
You do what?
I take care of you, I know what's the time of day, I take
Some
care of
money
you.
now.
I need some money now.
I need some money now. Now.
Give you your money.
Now. Now.
We laughing, but that's true. That's true. It's true. Hey, that's for real.
Can we go get something to eat? Can we go?
That people's really going on.
You have some money? Can you give us some money? Can we just go?
Y'all a little bit too loud over there. The TV, y'all are louder than the TV.
Well, you the one who said you was ready to eat. While they over there talking, we can go ahead and go get something to eat.
Well, wait a minute, the favorite parts come up.
I can't spend none of my money. I got other things to do with my money. He got the money.
Okay, go get the money, then I'll be ready.
He's funny.
I don't know. What the baby say? What the baby say when that was?
So y'all wanna go to my seat?
I don't.
That's about where I wanna go.
Right.
Now go ahead, I'm coming.
Why he gotta go with us? Why he just give us the money? Why he just give us the money? He ain't gotta go with us. He ain't gotta go. All right, you can come.
This just shows you that the kids at home don't necessarily have to be kids. They can be grown kids that a parent, they don't want to let go, and they ganging up on the man. Each and every day. It's the same thing. Next we have Sheridan Jones about domestic violence. Sheridan Jones is a native of North Carolina by way of New Bern. Sheridan is a single mother of four daughters. She's also the grandmother of a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. In 2007, she moved to Raleigh, North Carolina with her daughters. While raising her daughters, Sheridan earned an associate degree in early childhood education from Craven Community College in 1999. In 2012, she completed her Bachelor's of Science degree in business and furthered her studies to obtain her Master's in business from the University of Phoenix in 2015. Sheridan is an active member of New Restoration Christian Center under the leadership of Bishop Eric Ellis. There she oversees the children's church and the singles ministry. I present to you Sheridan Jones.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to give thanks to Pastor Judd and his wife for inviting me, and definitely Ms. Thompson and my classmate Leslie Thompson for just having that candid conversation, because she knew none of this about me in the grocery store one day. And lastly, not lastly, but my bishop, Eric Ellis, First Lady Ellis of New Restorations, and not to mention my children. My children, Rosie and Janet, are here today, my grandson, Caden. But I'm happy this is so informal, because until the skit, I was very nervous.
Until the skit.
But I am a domestic violence survivor of about 10 plus years. And wow, it was 10 long years, I should say. 10 years, 4 kids later. Something started off as simply as a push. 5 years in the relationship. So for 5 years, I saw nothing that would make me think that anything was wrong with this awesome man, because he was very good to me. Always made sure I had the nicest things, drove the nice cars, all of those things. But behind closed doors, things were not as they appeared. So as you guys are sitting here, y'all look so pretty and so well dressed. Well, I did that too. I was a very well dressed up mess. I would come to church every Sunday with my beautiful daughters and have them all lined up, all cute and everything, nobody knowing just before I got to church, we had a drag down, struck down fight, because I wasn't scared and I wasn't afraid to fight back. But over the years, we kept, being in this thing, and oftentimes I would threaten to say, I'm gonna leave you. You're not ever gonna marry me. We done got 4 kids together. I never got married. To this day, I'm still not married. And even one time when Kathy here, she said that people, the abusers, or these people, they would come and they would go. Well, I did that one time. I went to a shelter, me plus my girls, and I only stayed a day. And she's right. When you go to these shelters, you're not able to, they don't want you to communicate with others. They don't want you to let your abuser know where you are, because they've had instances where people would come back and get them, or tell them where they're at and they would leave. So that happened to me one time. It's not that I told him, but it's just that I wasn't sure. It wasn't, as she said, it wasn't my time to leave. But when it did come to that point, it was my daughter's 6th birthday in July, and I had messed up an appointment, something simple as an appointment. And we got into a fight that I remember it so clearly now, even to this day. The fight was brutal, and it was her birthday. And my good friend had come by, and I said, I need you. It was always a tradition with our girls. You know, we were very family orientated. We did lots of things with our children, our family. When we had birthday parties, people would come from near and far just to, you know, fellowship with us. But it was her birthday, and I had my good friend come by, and I said, I need you to take my girls out. You know, it's Janetta's birthday. I need, you know, to make sure she has the things she needs for her birthday. Well, my girlfriend got a look at my face, and I had a black eye and a busted lip. She was like, when is enough gonna be enough? You know, she said, I'm so tired of this for you. And that day was like, all right, I'm done. And I had said it many times before, I'm gonna leave, you know, I wanna get married, you don't wanna marry me. And I didn't get a marriage proposal until he knew I was really getting ready to go. Beautiful ring, the whole 9 yards. I wasn't wearing it. I kept the ring, but I didn't wear the ring. Her birthday, his father had passed, so he had some tragedy happen in his life. But we still had a house together, but at that time, it was kind of coming to the end, but I don't know that he thought so. So I remember that evening, he would come by, as he did every day, to visit the kids, come to see the girls, and then he would go home. But that night in particular, cell phones weren't as popular as they are right now. And I waited for him to come visit the kids. I waited for him to get to his mother's house. He called me and let me know he was at his mother's house. And that's when I made my great escape. I packed up my daughters, the clothes I can fit in suitcases, and I took the car that was paid for, because I wasn't planning on having no car notes. So I took the car that was paid for, and we went to a shelter. And at that shelter, just like Kathy said, and it's so ironic that her name is Kathy, because the lady that at the shelter, her name was Kathy. And I called Kathy like the night before. I said, Kathy, I'm coming back. And she said, well, Sheridan, I'm here. You know, whenever you're ready, I'm here. Sure enough, we got there, and she had a place for us to be. Now, we stayed there. We weren't supposed to stay for a month, but we stayed. It was like the summer going into the fall. We stayed almost till Christmas. And during this time, I really found that I was stronger than what I really thought I was in God. There was times that I honestly thought that I was totally alone, and you didn't want to share certain things with certain people because, you know, we had a facade built up around us that we thought no one knew what was happening in our house. But, you know, ain't too many times you can fake a black eye or a busted lip, or you're missing time from work. Ain't too many times you can say, oh, I fell down, or I hit myself with the door. That's not gonna work too many times. But we went to the shelter. We stayed there almost 6 months. I would get up every day, take them to school, to where we lived at, the house that we moved out of, wait for the bus to come, put them on the bus, and I would go back to the shelter or try to find a job. We did that for well over 6 months, and we weren't supposed to be there but a month. But it came to the end where it was time for us to leave, and I said, God, I really need you to help me with this thing. I said, I don't want to be here for Christmas. You know, grant you, they made it so comfortable for us. But I said, I don't want to be here for Christmas. I said, God, you know, help me figure out where it is I need to be and I can raise my kids. They had a program within the shelter, and this is another thing, you know, I'm being told that, you know, nobody's going to ever help you with these kids. You're never going to have a man in your life because nobody's going to raise no 4 kids. I done heard all of that. They had a program in the shelter that helped me find somewhere to stay. We stayed, and Leslie can vouch for this, we stayed in the nicest part of New Bern. I had no rent, no light bill, no nothing. We stayed on Matamoros Lane in James City. It was a predominantly white neighborhood. We were the only black people on that block. But that's where we stayed at. for, God, it had to be about 5 or 6 years until we came to Raleigh. So I say all of that to say, it's possible. You can let me be your testimony. I didn't think that I could do any of these things, but I learned that if you just give God just a little bit, He needed me to take a step. I didn't think I could leave this man. Strongholds are real, you know, and it was hard to make that step, but I promise you, once I made that step, it's like the doors just started shoot, 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 shoot. Even till we came to Raleigh, same thing happened here. All that education, I kept saying, oh, I'm not gonna try to get a degree until we move. And it just came to me in a dream. You know, I'm not one of those people who say, the Lord said, well, I don't have that testimony, but He would show things to me in dreams. And I saw us moving. And I didn't know how we were gonna do that. I was a teacher at Newburgh High. It's like barely $1,200 a month, but we did it. And we've been here since '07. And all of my girls are college graduates. As she said, I have 2 grandkids. I'm very grateful. So grateful. And I want to leave this with you. A lot of times you sit beside people every Sunday. People sat beside me every Sunday in church. I know people, if they knew, they didn't say anything. I had a pastor that would cover up what my children's father did to me. I went to him to talk to him, you know, help me get him some help. And he tried to talk me out of the charges. He wanted me to drop the charges against my children's father. But you sit beside people every Sunday. And a lot of times we come to church and we don't take the time to just have a conversation with someone. You don't know how much that would mean, you know, and I didn't have that. You know, I was at a church that I was raised at. Everybody knew me. You know, everybody knew him. Everybody knew our children, my family, his family. But sometimes it helps just to don't take for granted that you see the picture and not know what the story is all about. Take the time to talk to people. Take the time to listen. All I wanted was someone to listen to me, and I couldn't get that. When you couldn't get it from a pastor, that hit home hard because this man has known me all my life. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to open the floor for any questions, if you guys have any questions. But, you know, just be supportive of one another and, you know, talk to people. Don't be such in a rush to leave church sometimes. We all have stuff to do, but you have no idea what just a few minutes can do, and a little bit of support just goes an extremely long way. So thank you so much.
As we're preparing for the interpretive dance, do they know what it's
Don't start.
But you know, the skit only show a small portion of what men go through. They go through stuff just as brutal as we do. And, you know, preparing for this, I searched high and low for a scripture that related to men being abused. It was not there, because it was looked at that only women were the ones that's supposed to be abused. So I had to find something that was just on abuse, because there's nothing in the Bible that talks about men being abused, because they're supposed to be the strong one. They're supposed to be the head of the house. They're supposed to be the leaders. And we're the ones that's just supposed to be there that, I guess, going through the abuse. It didn't relate to a woman abusing a man. But as we see each and every day, it is so, that they do go through abuse just like we do. But some women are just so overpowering, and some men, either they just don't want to deal with it, or they're afraid of that female. And you know, a lot of times a man is just mild-mannered, and they just don't want to counteract to him because they don't want to hurt the female. Okay, now we're going to go into the interpretive dance about abuse.
He leads me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. When you become a believer, your spirit is made right. But sometimes the soul doesn't get the notice. It has a hole in it due to things that's happened in the past, hurt, abuse, molestation. But we want to speak to you today and tell you that God wants to heal the hole in your soul. Some people's actions are not because their spirit is wrong, but it's because the past has left a hole in their soul. May this wisdom help you get over your past and remind you that God wants to heal the hole in your soul.
Deliver me, 'cause all I seem to do is hurt me, hurt me. Lord, deliver me, 'cause all I seem to do is hurt me.
Yes, sir.
Hurt me.
I know it should be now I'm older. Sing it for me 2 more times.
My past won't let me go. Deliver me, 'cause all I seem to do is hurt me. Hurt me. One more time. I can't let go of my past. 'Cause all I seem to do, I know I was just 10. It won't let me go. Help me. Oh, yeah.
struggling with your past, just say it. Let the Lord know, just say, oh. He wants to restore your soul. Just say, deliver me. Fight. Who are called by my name. Humble themselves in prayer. Seek my face, turn from their wicked ways. I will give them heaven. Break it on down. So it is. It is so. Amen. When we pray, we want to end that with a declaration, a decree. So I'm speaking for all of you listening, starting here, starting now. The things that hurt you in the past won't control your future. Starting now, this is a new day. This is your exodus. You are officially ready now. I'm headed for the end.
Just like God is teaching me. This is my victory.
So the reason they have interpretive dance is because the message is different. It's not just a praise dance. There's a message behind it. And I'm quite sure that you could see that was a child that grew up with hurt and with pain. That was a child who had been beaten, who had gone through and became an adult. And God was the only one that could turn it around. And that's why we're here today and we're grateful for S.A.F.E. And these young ladies just let God. The child was carefree, feeling good about all that she was, being just a child until that touch. But there is one touch that you can get from the Father that could turn it all around.
Next. Next, we'll have someone speaking as an emergency responder as they come out on calls for domestic violence. I present to you Officer Brantley.
Talk really loud. Oh, okay. Talk a lot with my hands. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. All right, as I said before, they introduced, I'm Officer Brantley. I didn't have quite the opening statement as everyone else did, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been here a member of the Clayton Police Department now for almost 14 years, and most recently the last 5 as a canine handler here at the agency. I don't have a whole lot prepared for today, and I apologize. It was kind of a last-minute thing they sent me every day, but they sent the talker, so if I see anybody doing this, I'll stop, I promise. Okay? I've been married now for 13 years, and I have 2 blessings in my life, 2 boys, which Lord help us all. One's 10 and one is 4. But that is my escape. As I'm going to tell you today, there's some things, domestic violence, much like Ms. Nunez said earlier, it has no face. I could ask everyone in this room what domestic violence looks like and who's victims and to give me a definition of domestic violence, and I guarantee everyone in here would say something different. Domestic violence is by far, and I rank it right up with traffic stops, is by far one of the most dangerous calls that we as first responders go on. I understand that I'm representing law enforcement, but I'm just one. There are many of us, but we also rely on our first responders from the fire department as well as EMS. Any situation that we go into, there's so many unknown risks, and that is what makes it so dangerous for us. If we come to anybody's house in here, we're married, you have family, we don't know who's fighting, we don't know what the situation is, and sometimes it may be just as simple as before. You know, maybe just a slap here, slap there, it may be an argument of what we're going to have for dinner. I've been to, you can name it, I've probably been an answer to call that's domestic related to something of that sort. We never know, being that we never know, a lot of people here, it is your right to bear arms. People carry weapons all the time. We're going into your house. We don't know what's in there. Everybody in here that lives in a home has kitchen knives. You'd be surprised that anything in your house can be a weapon. I know personally, I know several officers who have been assaulted on domestic calls. Much like if I come in to arrest your brother or your sister or your wife or husband, a lot of those times the other party doesn't want that to happen, right? As mad as they may be, they say certain things, but obviously we know that what you say and what you do are two different things. There have been officers that have been assaulted arresting one party, and then the other party jumps on top of the officer or jumps back on that person. You know, so those situations we have to be ever ready, being that they are so dangerous. But it can be any number of things. Domestic violence is one of those situations, at least one of the things in North Carolina that they take very seriously. As far as state law goes, it doesn't say I can arrest, I may arrest, it says I shall arrest. Okay, so with the powers of arrest, that's a lot of responsibility for any of us. But if I go to a call and anybody has a black eye or a scratch on their arm, and it doesn't matter what the injury is, if there's an injury and I can certainly justify who did it, then I have to arrest that person. Because a lot of people call 911 thinking what? The police are going to come referee. And a lot of times, most of the time, probably what we're going to do. But we get there, and a lot of times in the response time, and it may be 1 minute, it may be 5 minutes, it may be 7, or maybe sometimes longer to a call such as that. But when we arrive on scene in that 5, 7, or 10 minutes, you're thinking to yourself, maybe I shouldn't have called 911. Just like Ms. Nunez was talking about the trafficking. That's one of the things we're always looking for, because we never know what situation we're going into. We may go into a house where we get there and all of a sudden it's like, everything's fine now, we're good. We can't just let that go. So we're asking these questions. Sometimes we have to poke and prod a little bit. And a lot of times people get very, very uncomfortable about that. But then there are times we get there and it is all, you know what, is broken loose. You know, and you're just kind of getting in between people and trying to separate people. You know, and that's our primary goal, is to separate everybody and try to find what happened. Find out the truth, and certainly trying to find the most peaceful result. That's not always the easiest thing. And to go a step further, it kind of complicates matters even more when you have children involved. Because now the children are seeing this. Sometimes we have to, of course, empathize with the children. But sometimes it's the children being abused by a parent. Sometimes it's a parent on one of their grandparents. So it doesn't just mean family, is basically what I'm trying to say. It can be anybody. Anybody that's in a partnership or has lived with anybody in any type of domestic relationship ever in your life, you can potentially be a victim of domestic violence. Before I came in today, like I said, I was not prepared, but I did pull a few statistics. So on a national level, certainly there are resources across the country to help any victims of domestic violence. But that could be anything from, just like you said before, from churches in town to national organizations, to funding projects, things like that. But as far as statistics go, I read this earlier. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner. So when you think about the U.S. population, they did the math and it said it was about 10 million people. So you think 10 million people every 20 seconds. 20 people is 10 million people every, what did I say? I'm sorry, I'm confused. I said every minute. Okay? So most people probably don't even think that happens. Don't you think there's a way that that can happen? And of those, when you add weapons into it, the number went up, 19% of those involve weapons. But that doesn't mean a knife, that doesn't mean a gun, that doesn't mean, I mean, if somebody hits you with a chair, that's still a domestic violence, that's still a weapon. And then looking through North Carolina, I actually pulled this morning. In 2018, there were 103 victims of domestic violence that resulted in homicide. And that's all reported through the SBI. So as you can see, as from a law enforcement standpoint, training and standards and the people that we train with and everyone that sets forth all the recommendations that we train in every year, domestic violence is by far one of the biggest mandated training that we go to every year. The SBI maintains all those records, but they even further to break that down into marriage relationships, domestic partnerships, and everything all the way across the line. And it's crazy to think that many people are victims, but a lot of people don't report it. And that is by far one of the hardest things on any domestic violence call is somebody to admit the truth. Because a lot of times we get there, and as I said before, in that 5, 7, or 10 minutes that we're responding, that by the time we get there, they change their mind. Now they're trying to make the story sound not quite so bad. You know, and recidivism rates, which that's people who do it over and over and over again, especially victims who have brainwashed their victims or their other partners or kids in the house. They either think it's okay, and they eventually reach a breaking point, or you get into a situation where it's so out of control that they just don't know what to say. They won't help, they need the help, but are scared to ask for the help because if they do, they feel like the other person's going to retaliate against them. So those calls are always very fluid, if you will. And by that I mean when we get there, our first goal is to calm everybody down, separate them, find out what's going on. And sometimes the resolve is one person may be happy with it, the other person says no. We're not in the business of kicking people out of houses. So if both people live there, we can't. But we have to go the step farther to make sure that when we leave, that they're not going to get hurt again. Make sense? Not going to get hurt again. And it doesn't have to be physical. I know a lot of people think that as well. And that's the biggest question we get. Do you see a lot of people getting beat up at houses, or do you go to a lot of calls where you see physical abuse? There are times, I'm not going to lie, I've done this long enough that sometimes is the case. But sometimes it's just verbal, much like the skit we saw today. It's funny to look at it and kind of see it for what it's worth and know it's not real. But in my eyes, I'm seeing that as a real situation. I responded to calls like that, you know. And you have to go in, and so many things can happen. One argument can lead to 10 arguments, and then you get a whole bunch of people involved, and you know, then you don't really know. You got to figure out who's who, what's what, and what exactly happened, and take the appropriate action. So we as law enforcement here in Clayton, we have a lot of resources in Johnston County that offer help. We have 24-hour crisis lines that we can call. We also have Harbor, which is one of the biggest ones. Anybody ever heard of that before? The Harbor, okay. Because they have a location here in town. It's a thrift store that everything they sell in there, all that money gets back to Harbor to assist victims of domestic violence. And most recently, North Carolina has implemented the Victims' Crime Rights Act, which with that, we've supplied, if we have a victim, in this case of domestic violence, we provide them with this form and this document that they agree that they want to receive updates on this call. Much like in the case we were hearing earlier from your situation, you know, my biggest question to you earlier, I didn't ask this, but did you ever run back into them, or do you still fear that you're going to run back into them? You know, and so a lot of times, time heals wounds. It does. But at the same time, some people want to know what's going on with their case, whether they were charged or whether the other party was charged, or simply where they just separated and went their separate ways. They want to know what's going on. So now the state says we have to provide this information and keep them up to date on what's happening with it, much like so the case that there's no chance that they'll find out where each other are. I'll gladly answer any questions. Hopefully that kind of goes along with what we were trying to get to today. But does anyone have any questions? Well, I'm no good if nobody has questions. Yes, sir.
On some calls that you've made, have you physically had to pull a weapon out?
One of my weapons?
Yes.
No. No. I'm trying to think of the easy way to say this. There are times that it's like, most times it's going to be hands-on because it's very quick. I've had quite a few calls over my career where if we separate them into 2 different rooms, one's hearing what the other one's saying and like, oh, she's lying, this, that, and the other, and then they get arguing and they're going to try to get back together and you have to get hands-on, you know. that's part of the job that I signed up for. It's not something I enjoy by any means. I don't like putting hands on people, I don't like hurting people. I mean, that's your personal space. I get that. But I also have a job to do to protect each of you. One from hurting the other, and to protect the other one, well, protect you from each other. I'll say that because that's in essence is what we're doing. We're making sure that when we leave this house, that we're not going to come back and find hopefully someone dead or severely beaten or anything such as that. Especially when you have kids. And that, to me, I think having children changed me. That's one of the things that changed the most with me is I go to homes and see kids that are exposed to this. Maybe not be in the same room, but even in the same house. They hear mom and dad arguing. They hear mom and dad, or dad fighting mom, or mom fighting dad. Just like we said earlier, it's not always women. A lot of people think it's a man assaulting a woman, and I can honestly say it's probably 50-50. I get just as many calls from men saying he was abused by a woman as women saying they were abused by a man. Whether it's verbal, physical, and just even talking about human trafficking a lot of times. It's that I'll give you something, but you got to do this for me. And that's how it all starts. And it could be anything. I mean, that could lead to drug habits, money. Like, I'll give you this, but you got to pay me this back, or anything like that. And then human trafficking it becomes a concern, and certainly domestic violence in that case. Because at that point, it's a domestic partnership, and all domestic violence laws apply. Good question. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you, if you come to a situation where, you run back, like you asked her, the chef, you ever run back to the other partner, but if that case come up, what do y'all do from that point?
You talking about, no, so I'm trying to make sure I try. So if we separate them, then one goes back to the house?
Like you mind use you right? Okay. If she been gone for a while and then she see the ex later on in life, if that happened, they get back together, what y'all do anything, or y'all just?
Unfortunately not. I mean, people are allowed to make their own choices, okay? I was almost hesitant to say this, but it's the truth of the matter. More times than not, we do see them going back to the same person. Sometimes it works out good, sometimes it's that revolving door. We're going to the same house, the same calls for the same stuff. Sometimes it gets more petty than others, and sometimes it's for a huge knockdown, drag-out fight. So it's hard to say they will normally go back because it's kind of hit or miss, but probably more times than not, you do see them go back. I mean, it's a place of comfort, somewhere they're used to.